Slurp-de-derp, my G's. Alright, my G's. Alright, my G's. This is going to be a super direct and concise video about vocal processing and my absolute favourite tips. I'm going to give you 3 main tips, maybe 4, and it's going to be really to the point, and I'm just going to get straight into it, no editing. So the best way to process a vocal is to not process the vocal, okay? So you never make... The beauty of a human voice is the main goal, you know. So the more you take away from it, the worse it's going to become if you want a nice realistic sound. Okay, so what you want to do when you record a vocalist, ideally, if you can't do it this way, it's not a problem, but you want to have 3 takes. So I've got a bit of an old Reeb's project here. So we've got 3 takes. We've got the main one and we've got one for the left and right. But let's focus first on the main one, and the number one thing that you do want to do a little bit of is EQing and maybe a bit of compression as well. EQing is one of the most important things because we're going to get that extra clarity and clean out the mud from the recording. So clean out the mud, basically. Find where the fundamental of the vocal is. I've run for so... You know, I can clearly see the fundamental is around here, you know, 200 and between 200 and 300. And anything below that is just rumble, so we don't need that. We don't want to cut so much that we take out the fundamental, but we want to just cut just below. I've run for so long in this place I belong. All right, taking out a bit of rumble. Then one thing we could do, if we want, we could look for any gaps in the kind of spectrum and boost them. So maybe I could find a little spot to boost where she doesn't quite hit the whole frequency range. I've run for so long in this place I belong. 2.5k, maybe a nice bit of treble there. That's pretty nice. And then one last thing I could do if I wanted, it depends on how loud you want the vocal and how bright. Generally, if it's a vocal, it wants to be the center stage, so it's good to have extra brightness. So if I want to, I could give a bit of extra brightness with a high shelf. I've run for so long in this place I belong. Okay, it's quite a good recording as it was, but obviously it depends on the sample that you've got always, how you're going to EQ it. But that's the basic premise. Then we can just move on quickly to compression, and I'll just get like a simple Logic one. And the idea is just to flatten out the file a bit. So you can see no singer is perfect, and they will have, you know, certain words that are louder. You can see over here it gets a bit louder towards the end. This hell, I never knew it was so. You can hear that she gets a bit loud towards the end. So this hell. All we're going to do is a little bit of simple compression, no attack, just a quick release. This hell, I never knew it was so cold. Just enough to spin that needle a bit on the really loud words and make the whole file a bit more even by comparison. If I was to bounce it out to show you an example with the compression on, you'll see that the new file now is a little bit more flatter. You see this last part here? It's not going up quite as high as it is previously. So that's all we got to do. That's the main part. The EQing and compression. That's tip number 1. So the next part of the vocal, and this is the most important to getting a really nice stereo image, is to have 2 separate left and right takes. They can be, you know, recorded very, very similarly to the first one, but just slightly different sounding. And the slight differences in the recording are going to mean the harmonics are slightly different. So we can pan one out to the left. You don't have to do it perfectly. You can sort of just do it by ear, how much you pan it. I've run for so long. And then on these ones that we pan out, I typically take a bit more low end out than I would for the main one. So maybe let's go up to 600 or 700 perhaps. I've run for and do the same on the other one. And then we can, after that, simply take the volumes down a bit and try to blend them in with the original so that they feel like they're sort of one cohesive vocal still, but with a bit of interest on the sides. I've run for so long in this place I belong. Okay, you can fine tune it to get it perfect. And one thing you can do if you don't have 3 takes is you could copy down the same vocal 3 times. So I'll show you it quickly here. Perhaps, you know, I can just take the main one, copy it down on both channels, and then on here I'm just going to use a plugin to give it variation in its sort of pitch or tonality. And one thing I could use, which is pretty good for that job, is a formant filter. So I can take a formant filter like this, and we'll just listen to the first one here. I've run Just sort of messing with the kind of tonality of it. And let's go ahead and do the same on the other version here. And on this one, we will just do a slightly different setting on the format filter.
I've run for so long in this place.
Could maybe go a bit further and give a bit of distortion as well with some other plugins or a bit of variation, but not too much though.
I've run for so long in this place. I belong.
So we might need to refine it a little bit more, maybe a tiny bit of convolution or distortion, as I said, but it is possible to do it that way round. However, it's not going to be as good as if you have 3 recorded takes. That's always going to be the best option.
I've run for so long.
It's just going to be more natural. So that's the layering part done, and we'll move on to the next tip, which is grouping them all together and then applying a little bit of just a touch of processing to the whole group. So one thing we could do on the whole group, if we feel like it needs like a little bit more cleanliness or clarity in the mid-range, we could perhaps take out some of the sides, give it a bit more,
I've run for so long.
give the mono part of the sound a bit more dominance in the mid-range.
I've run for so long in this place. I belong.
By just taking out a bit more of the sides in the kind of low fundamental area. That could be one nice thing to clean it up a little bit if it's too stereoed. And finally, we can just add in a touch of reverb, and I'm going to do reverb in 2 ways. We're going to do one reverb on the whole group, and it's going to be really, really subtle. So you don't want to over reverb the vocal or you'll lose the clarity. So let's just take a really little, quite a high end reverb. And we'll use that, and we'll just use it in a really small amount on the mix.
I've run for so long in this place. I built.
Now that's the main part to the reverb, so it's just a subtle, like, yeah, a little bit of flavouring on top. And then, if we want to actually do some more creative reverb effects,
Belong.
for example, at the end of here with Belong, what I prefer to do is to create a separate little reverb effect. So
Belong.
So for example, I'll bounce that out, and then here, let's go 100% reverb. Maybe we'll use a different reverb. Perhaps we can use, I don't know, let's use the convolution reverb from Kilohertz. So it has a bit of a different kind of sound. And let's
Belong.
find a nice setting.
Belong.
Yeah, perhaps we'll use this one. It's got quite a bit of high end. And then I might just sort of fade this file in a bit. And then we've got a nice little reverb effect, and we'll turn that down. We'll EQ out most of the low end.
Belong.
Can leave a bit in, but the main thing is we turn it down.
Belong.
And then here we've got like this, chosen part in the vocal where we want to have a bit of a reverb emphasis, not on the whole thing always,
I've run for so long in this place. I belong.
Okay, so that's what I do in a lot of my tracks. I'll emphasize certain lines with extra reverb, but the main reverb part will be quite minimal indeed to keep the clarity. That's the main tips for vocal processing. There you go, my G's. Hope you enjoyed that. Make sure you like and subscribe for more tutorials, more content, more wackiness, more weirdness, and just more joy. So one more quick thing then, my G's, I didn't mention was, once you've done this vocal processing, like keeping it really simple, this is like, the basics of processing the actual vocal, keeping it pure as you can, but just tidying it up a bit and giving it a bit of a stereo image, keeping the levels kind of balanced. And once you've sort of done that, then the goal is really to prioritize it in the mix among everything else. That's the main goal. So what you want to do is you want to use stuff like track spacer or multiband sidechainer to make sure you get the fundamental elements coming through the mix, like all the mid range, not that's the sides, but the main mid range of the vocal, wherever that is, the fundamental part, whether it was around 200 or 300, and then the rest of the mid range, up to like 1K maybe. You want to really be giving space for that all to cut through everything else, So make sure like any other leads or basses like get out of the way for the vocal to come through. Yeah. In the high end, things will blend together naturally, so you don't have to sidechain as heavily. But in the mid range, make sure you sidechain quite well with track spacer or Waves F6 or whatever you like to use. Multiband dynamic compressor as well will be fine. And yeah, that's the little bonus tip. And tomorrow we will continue with the tutorial series. And tomorrow I'm going to do a video on creating tense vocal textures. So we're going to take perhaps this vocal or a different one, and we're going to make a really great tense background kind of tension layer, because tension layers made from vocals are just king, in my opinion. So yes, see you guys for that. Pardon me. Tomorrow, much love. Stay blessed. See you soon.